Right, Kieran, thanks for jumping on. I do appreciate it. I think, firstly, best place to kick off is for anyone who's watching this who doesn't know who you are. Do you want to quickly give me a bit of an overview of who you are, what stage of career you're at, and how long you've been advising for?
Yeah, so I'm Kieran. I've got over 20 years now in financial services. Started off doing home service with the co-op, so a little bit like Man from the Crew, doing the rounds and door knocking and what have you. Then did a number of different bank assurance roles with HSBC, Bank of Scotland Investment Service. That then merged into Lloyd's and the private client team there. Then set up my own practice through SJP 2010. Did that until maybe 2022, something around that. And then been doing IFA stuff since then. So quite a lot of experience in financial services and a number of different kind of organisations and backgrounds.
I think what's really interesting, Kieran, is that quite a few people who have joined AdvisorOS, you actually come with a lot of experience, probably more experience than most that have joined. And yeah, we'll talk about this in a minute. It'd be really interesting to hear kind of where you think you've got the most value so far today. So probably a good place to start is, before joining, what do you think you were struggling with the most in your business or your career that wasn't working, or you felt stuck at? Was there specific points?
I mean, there were a multitude of different things. When you're first setting up a practice and you're operating on your own, there's a lot of demands on your time. You're doing the job of many different roles, many hats, if you like. So I think the main sort of focus for me really was, I want to be better at everything, really, at every element of running a business and building a business. The big factor as well, so you mentioned me having more experience and probably a little bit older than perhaps some of the guys on the course. So what really prompted me is there's a lot changed since I first started building up a business, and the methods and the ways that you do that, the old networking methods and building referrals, it's just a little bit outdated. It's difficult to scale, and it's difficult to do it at the speed I wanted to do it. And I think that was the main driver for me, is to look at people that have walked in my shoes more recently in building a business with more modern methods, if you want to call it that. So, utilising your LinkedIn and social media, doing things on a more personal basis rather than, at arm's length, doing sort of networking meetings and seminars, because I just don't feel that they are as effective in the modern world.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, there's definitely, I suppose, better approaches now, because our industry, sadly, is quite far behind, I think, other industries in every sense, not just like technology, but also, like you said, with marketing and client acquisition specifically.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good point you made there. What do you think it cost you in terms of income, confidence, or momentum before you joined?
Probably you can't really put a figure on it, because it'd be a large amount, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you kind of get into it. And
Yeah.
it's talking to people like yourself that have set things up with scale and with systems that you realise how far behind you are just using kind of Google
Yeah.
Sheets and spreadsheets. There's a lot better things to be doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, how did that make you feel about the future? So knowing kind of that and kind of having those pain points, I suppose, how did it make you feel about your future as an advisor?
I think it gives you a lot of confidence, actually, that you can build the type of business that you want. But I think we've spoke off camera about this, Dan, that it's
Yeah,
not just building a business, it's actually building a lifestyle and having the business to fit in and around your lifestyle.
absolutely.
And I think the problem is, with a lot of successful people, something gives somewhere along the line, and it's often the personal life, it's often the home life, and I didn't want that to be the case. So I want to be as efficient as possible, to have things in the process that are automated, that are systemic, that do allow other people to pick things up, and just to really drive momentum, really. So I think that's a big factor for me, is the all-round package that this allows.
And I think that's what's really interesting, right? Because initially, for some people, it might be the attraction of scaling and building a business that can generate seven figures, right? But for a lot of people, it's also that lifestyle element, getting your time back, and you can only do that through systems, processes, bringing in tech, AI, and so forth, and obviously doing some of the kind of behaviours, principles we've taught, obviously, since you've been involved with AdvisorOS. I mean, what made you decide, if you can remember, to join AdvisorOS originally, rather than just carrying on as you were?
I think it was just a time scale factor. I was looking at how long everything was taking, and I was just kind of thinking there's got to be a quicker way of doing these things, a quicker way of building the business by utilising different methods. And I like to think I'm always open to learn. I've done a lot of extra learning during my life and my career, doing master's degrees and things like that. So I'm always kind of that mindset that I don't know everything, and I'm quite willing to learn from people that have kind of, done something that I aspire to do, or walk with people in their shoes. So it was probably that, really, just thinking, there's other people that have built businesses quicker than the 10, 15 years that is the norm. If we can bring that down to 3 to 5 years, then why not have a look at it?
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, you've been so successful already as an advisor before we kind of met. And then the proof is in the pudding. You've focused on personal development your whole life. You've constantly reinvested in yourself to fast track your progress. Your results as an advisor kind of speak for themselves in terms of what you achieved before you even met us, and then you're doing the same again, and it's a shame some people just don't recognize that. There's that old saying, right? The best investment is yourself, right? You get the highest ROI, and it's permanent, right? The knowledge you gain. So hopefully in most cases. So that's a really good segue into what I'm going to ask you next. So what would you say to someone who's kind of sitting on the fence right now and watching this maybe and thinking of joining?
I'd say just do it, because there's so many benefits. And two big things, I think, are probably accountability, because you know that you're going to be having a discussion week in, week out. So if we're bringing something up, then you're going to get called out on it. Can you show me this? How have you done that? And I think, again, if you're running whether it's a small business or whether you're just a big business but you're the main decision maker, sometimes it's nice just to bounce ideas with other people that are kind of in and around the same arena, because you've got shared stories, and you might be thinking, I'm just going to try this, and then Dan or James might say, well, I've actually tried that, and either it worked, or you'd be better to just do something slightly different and tweak it, and this is why. So I see it almost as like an extension of your team. So there's some guys that you can act upon and work with, ask questions, bounce ideas around. So it's like a cohort, if you like, of like-minded individuals, and you can all just help each other drive forward. There's no competition. We're not kind of, we're not against each other. And if it works for you and it works for the other guys, it can work for me as well, because we've got different clients and different arenas.
Yeah, and I feel like we're all getting fast-tracked, right? Because we've got this community of high-performing advisors who are all above average in terms of where they are already as an advisor, and we're just getting better every week, right? As a collective, there's a lot of power in that, and I'd hate to be the advisor who's not involved in our community, right? You're at such a disadvantage when you've got all these other advisors turning up every week saying, I'm doing this now, I'm doing that now, I've tried this, save your time with that, because this tends to work better for me. And the great thing is, like you said, the accountability piece is huge. And what was really interesting, Kieran, is when I started kind of developing this, some time ago now, I thought the content we put behind the scenes, would be most valuable. When realistically, it's probably the community and the kind of like weekly coaching we do. So it's really interesting you kind of brought that up, and again, kind of segues nice into my next question. What has changed for you since joining AdvisorOS? Because you're coming up to about a year now, right?
Yeah. So probably the biggest thing for me is setting up systems, processes, and automation. So I've got a lot of the kind of LinkedIn type stuff now. It's working behind the scenes, and it's working. It's generating inquiries, it's generating conversations. And when I first started doing it, I was talking to some people, and they were saying, "Oh, maybe it's not quite ready for now," and you're diarising it. But then you realise how quickly that 3 months or 6 months comes around. And then you're getting the reminder in your calendar to say, oh, we need to speak to this guy, speak to these people. So it's one of these things where I think it's a little bit like a snowball effect, that we're probably, we're still in the early stages, and it's only going to get better and better, because you're reaching out to more people and you're building your network, and the sort of social media marketing just gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, it will be. I mean, hopefully, you can see the difference even going into 2026, right? That even we're learning, developing, like building out the team, making AdvisorOS more effective, more structure to it, more content at the back end as well, and it will be incredible to see how people develop over the rest of this year, because I think it will only get stronger, especially as more people come into the community as well, which is going to be really good. So no, I really appreciate that you sharing that, Kieran. And I suppose, I don't know if this is good, same question but framed a little bit different maybe to a degree, but is there any thing you can identify that would be almost like the biggest shift, either professionally or personally, that you now see in yourself, obviously since joining?
I think probably looking at delegation, and allowing other people to do things on your behalf. I've probably always been a little bit of a control freak and wanting to do or be involved in everything. And I think we spoke about some of the stuff you do, whereby you want people to solve problems to a certain degree before they come to you. So I think that's probably a big factor as well. He's trying to allow other people to do their jobs, let paraplanners do their reports without having too much input, and just taking more of an advice role, if you like, overseeing things.
I think the key thing is building that, like you said earlier, structure, systems, process for them as well as you, so you aren't getting bothered as much. You can focus on the revenue generating activities, or get your time back and spend it with family, right? What's the value that you've got out of AdvisorOS that you didn't expect to get when you joined?
Probably the community side, the shared learning, and the sort of like the spirit within the team, that people are happy to help, and that I probably thought there was more, the lessons, the learning, more of the regimented stuff. But I think you touched on it just slightly earlier. I seem to get quite a lot of value out of the chats, which is probably the more informal piece. But that's where you kind of sort of find out what people are doing, what's worked for other people, what type of clients they're dealing with, and also maybe what clients you don't deal with. And I think that's probably a big learning point that we've all had within AdvisorOS, is you don't really want every client. You don't want every type of client, and to niche down, try and pick specific areas, and also be quite stringent with the type of clients that you can help and you work best with, so that you're not ending up with a client bank full of time drainers, time consumers that are actually probably not worth it for you.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily the right fit for what you're trying to achieve, or the sort of clients you want to help and service, right? I mean, this might also be the community, but aside from the community, maybe, what do you think people don't see from the outside that's probably made one of the biggest differences to you?
Well, certainly for me, I didn't know some of the things that were available. Some of the things that were available in the marketplace, whether that be things like Dripify for doing automation of your LinkedIn requests, whether it's things like Zapier to scraping data and email addresses, whether it's things like Notion and using Slack effectively. So that's probably a big win for me, because you can spend so long like researching things and looking at different sort of back office systems and what have you. But if we've got a group of people who've already tried and tested a number of different things, you can just sign up and get going.
Yeah, and you're going to save years, right? Because I've worked through so many different systems, apps, and where, like, say, Dripify or Notion might be the best thing to use right now, it might not be in 6 months, a year, right? And we've seen that in AdvisorOS in a short period of time, where we've adapted and started using other systems, because tech is moving, AI is moving so quickly these days, and advisors who aren't using the sort of systems processes we put in place, especially from an automation standpoint, are going to just fall behind. And I think it's that's a really interesting one, Kieran, and one that would have even slipped my own mind there. That's probably the most valuable lesson. What are people using for certain things, and how are they using it? You can give people all the tools in the toolkit, so to speak, but if they're not using them as effectively, like we did a great session on LinkedIn, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, and everyone's used LinkedIn virtually who's in the community, but not probably to its full potential, so we worked through a methodology, a process, right, to get the most out of it, in terms of, like, from a campaigns perspective, from a usage perspective, but also from an automation perspective. So I think that's a really good point you made. In terms of, like, how would you describe the caliber of people in the AdvisorOS community?
Oh, I think they're all top, to be honest.
Love that.
Yeah, you've got great guys. You can tell that everybody's used to dealing with the type of clients that we are from the conversations. I mean, just this morning, one of the guys was talking about a multi-generational family that he was dealing with, 3 million funds under management between a few family members. And you can just see from the way people speak that the caliber that, we're not really attracting, as you said earlier, the people you probably thought you might get, which were people at the outsets of their careers. I'm not saying it won't work for them, but I do think that where we are as a group, certainly in our cohort, is more experienced people, probably higher value clients, and you've got people that are kind of looking at expanding that with every client and getting the most out of them.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point, and some really nice ones as well to make. And if the guys ever watch this, it'd be nice for them to hear. We can't tell them the truth, Kieran, what you actually think, right?
Yeah.
But all jokes aside, who would you say AdvisorOS is not for? Difficult question.
I'd say it's not for people that just kind of don't make a decision. It's not for those people that are always looking at things and each shiny new object and then never actually move forward. I think it's for the people that know what they want and they want some help to get there. And I think for those type of people, it's perfect.
Yeah, the action men, the go-getters, so to speak.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so I mean, we kind of answered that to a degree, but if we elaborate on it a bit more, who is this absolutely for?
It's absolutely for anybody that wants to build and run a better business. And I think it does work for multiple people at different stages of the journey. If you are at the outset, you're a new practice owner or advisor, but you're hungry and you want to grow, perfect. If you're a very successful guy who's kind of stagnated and you just want the next step, great. This would work.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I think the thing is that people do have different goals, and that's the thing. Whether they want to get time back, earn more money, both, the goal is to you can achieve it all, right? So if someone, yeah, yeah, and I think the big goal as well is like doing this and us all being involved is we generally want to create better advisors, which gives better outcomes to clients, right? Which is a huge part of it. So I think you made some amazing points there. I suppose if someone's watching this and is a serious advisor who wants to level up, what would you say to them? Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Join the right team. Well, what we'll do, Kieran, we'll end on these last few rapid fire questions, right? So these are going to be a bit challenging. I did these with James and they were good fun. So what I'm going to do is ask 3 questions, and ideally I want short, punchy answers. And if you can, do it in 1 sentence. You ready? So I can never do stuff in 1 sentence, so good luck. So AdvisorOS in 1 sentence. Love it. 1 word to describe the experience. Biggest win since joining. Nice. You're off the hook, Kieran. It's so kind of you to take the time to do this today. And hopefully it's going to help a load of other people, who are kind of inquiring at the minute and maybe might be sitting on the fence and, might be even intimidating joining, let alone kind of worrying, if they're going to get value from the experience. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to obviously share your feedback. And I'll see you next week on the Coach It. Take care, Kieran. Speak soon.